Hello and welcome to the closing Distinguished Speaker event from the Fuqua School of Business here at Duke University. And what a close we have. We are incredibly fortunate to have the one and only Coach K, who we could take the entire time just to go through all the accolades and accomplishments. But let me simply say that he's the greatest of all time as a coach, and one of the finest leaders and educators I've ever had the privilege of meeting in my lifetime. So, Coach, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, well, one, it's been an honor for over 2 decades now, Bill, to be on the Fuqua team. And I've learned so much from our interaction, whether it be with leadership conferences or conversations or the times we've come over to interact with the students. The development of COLE, the Center for Organizational Leadership and Ethics, that occurred 14, 15 years ago. And so it's an honor. I feel that our relationship is much different than it is at other schools, where at other universities, people are siloed depending on the departments. And athletics and the business school has really interacted well, and it's benefited both. By the way, this is the first time I've worn a tie in over a year, and I know they say like it's riding a bicycle or whatever. You forget how to do it. But I'll tell you, this was a bad boy to tie, so I hope I did.
Yeah, well, I'm impressed. It looks very sharp, and I have to say, you pointed out the relationship between the basketball program and you as the coach and the business school is unique. I don't know that any other dean gets to give their basketball coach advice on how to run their team, which does not happen.
I took all of your advice this year, and we didn't make the tournament.
So that's it.
I'm glad that you confessed to that. I didn't want to throw you under the bus, but since you said it, I'll go.
So let's start there, which is like so many people, your year was beyond crazy in so many ways, but it was pointed out to me that that for the first time since 1992. That you've ended the season with two consecutive seasons with wins. And so can you compare how you feel now with how you felt in 1992?
I felt a lot better winning in Indianapolis and Minneapolis, the national championship, than having one of our Fuqua graduates, our MBA graduates, Justin Robinson, 2 years ago, who was hot at that time. We were 25-6. We thought we had a chance. This year, we did not have a positive COVID case, Bill, since 1 August, the whole year until the ACC tournament. And after we won our second game against Virginia Tech, 8 hours later, we had a positive, and it ended our season. And then it hit a couple of the guys and a member of our staff. Some of our kids were in either quarantine or isolation for 17 days, and we just sent them home after that. And imagine ending a season like that and not seeing your guys for almost a month. That was it. It's so bad. That was not real good.
Yeah, because a year ago, even though the season ended unexpectedly, at least you were able to get closure. But
Right.
with this, it's like everyone, yeah.
There was none, and then we've had a lot of people leaving. We had two graduates. Patrick graduated from the MMS program. Jordan Goldwire graduated, and it was not able to get into a graduate program here. So those were good things. You had a couple kids who declared for the NBA, and DJ Stewart and Matthew Hurt. And we had a couple transfers. And so we also lost one of our top walk-ons, Mike Buckmeyer, who graduated. So we started the year, and then Jalen Johnson left during the year, to pursue a pro career. We started the year with 14 players, 11 scholarship and 3 walk-ons, and we ended with 6. And that's not unheard of in our, right now, almost 40% of the NCAA men's college basketball are in the transfer portal. 1,500 kids, and we have probably 200 others who've declared for the NBA. So it's somewhere between 45 and 50% of turnover. Like we're going through an incredible time, and we're trying to deal with that right now.
Yeah, so this is, I mean, for college basketball, this is certainly an unprecedented time, and so you've got people leaving early for the draft, you've got grad transfers, and now anyone can go in the portal.
Right.
And so I was struck in thinking about the situation you're in.
Mhm.
You were doing an interview, and the interviewer asked you, well, how do you like the one and done rule? And you said, doesn't matter if I like it, I can't change it. I just have to adapt.
Right.
And so now you're in this even crazier situation. So how do you adapt to all of this incredible change in 1 year?
Well, right now, everybody's a one and done, or can be, because you can transfer right away. So it's a chaotic time in our sport. Plus, this summer at some time, they'll introduce what's called the NIL, name, image, and likeness, where college athletes might be able to profit from their name, image, and likeness, and we'll see how that turns out. So it's a time of immense change. And so what we've tried to do, one, we've had a good recruiting year. We have 4 freshmen coming in who are not just good players, they're outstanding players. And we have 4 returning players who I think are really good players. And we've added 2 grad transfers, and one youngster from Davidson and one from Marquette. And we didn't want to go to the transfer portal, but a grad transfer, someone who has the maturity, security, and would benefit from your program, the MMS program, and can help us. So right now we have 3 walk-ons, and 10 scholarship players, and it's not going to change much more than that. And we want to make sure that I want to be committed to the guys that I have returning and I've recruited. So we could have gotten a couple more transfers, but that transfer is going to come in wanting to be a star. And then my relationship with the guys that I've recruited and are coming back, it's not a trustworthy relationship. So we're going to kind of go old school here and try to reclaim our culture a little bit more and do it where less is more, as long as less is trustworthy and where we can trust one another.
So I'm going to probably spend a little bit of time on this issue of, you're someone who really exemplifies what it means to be a true lifelong learner. And in a previous conversation, I was struck by something you said, where whenever you go through something, good or bad, you treat it as a learning experience.
Right.
And you ask, what was good? What did we learn? What didn't go right? And instead of playing the game, what would have happened if only something, you say, what did happen?
Right.
And therefore, how do we respond? And so as you reflect on what you've learned, where are you in terms of your current lessons?
Yeah, well, obviously we all have gone through and are still going through an incredible year. And you can say what could have been done if there wasn't COVID, but that doesn't make sense. To me, it's a waste of time. And so when I look back, what did I learn from it? A big thing that I learned is, I think I already knew it, but it got hammered into me. was the value of preparation. We had the youngest team I've ever coached and the fourth youngest in the NCAA. And we were not able to run our summer program and really part of our fall program. We were not prepared. That's why the older teams did better during this season than the younger teams. And it reinforced with me what we have to do this summer in preparation, just the value of that. The other thing, the value of relationships. I was not able to develop the relationships with my guys. One, not being with them during that summer, but even in the fall, because of my age and no vaccinations at that time, I was put in a position by our medical people where I had to stay distant. Like in our practice facility, I was in our weight room behind glass. I wasn't slapping them on the butt or, pulling them over. That's it, Bill, you got it, and whatever. Or just sitting down with them before or after a workout. And so I did not, I'm usually really good at that with relationship building. It's not that we didn't have bad attitudes. Actually, the kids had great relationship, but they didn't have the deep relationship with me. And that's on me. I wasn't able to do that to that level. So when I say if it's a deep relationship and I say something to you, boom, it's instant. With our group, it's not like they didn't believe, but you kind of had to show them on tape or whatever. And it just wasn't at the level. Again, there's nothing bad. It shows that you have the amount of time you have to put in to develop valuable relationships and preparation. I call it, I wasn't able to beat my environment, and I was not able to do it with the group I had, and that's on me. And so we're already making moves and doing things, just like I said, how we're constructing our team, our preparation. We're already planning our value meetings, different events that we would do together, some really tough things where you weren't to get knocked on your butt and then a teammate picks you up, or we get knocked on our butt as a group and we pick each other up in our training. And we were not able to do that. And that's where those veteran teams, they had done that before. And the value of that, you know what it is? It's like you can't take culture for granted. Like you have to keep investing in culture. A lot of people talk about branding, and that's good. You can have a brand, and then your brand can lose culture. And then the brand's going to go out the window. And so we have a great brand, we have a great culture, but we lost some of it. And I think Duke did too. And I think part of us reclaiming ours will help our university too, because we provide like a spirit, or we provide something for the university. And I think we all have to work together to get back to the level that we can be in a more normal environment.
Yeah. So in some sense, you went through a perfect storm where with your youngest team ever, they needed more from you,
right?
Because they didn't have the experience and there weren't other veteran players to give them that experience. And at that moment in time, they were cut off from you.
Right.
So that's a big.
And I there was, Bill, during the year I was 73 and everyone's saying, be careful. So it's not like I'm like but I'm more hesitant to, I gotta be smart about that. And so you weren't as, like instinctively reactive, as you should be, whether it be on the bench and in the practice or whatever. And I got to do a better job, and I got to do the job that I have been doing before the pandemic. But I learned the value of it, man. uh, I, I really, in a very difficult way, I learned the value of it.
Yeah, when something is taken away, you really notice. Um, so one of the things that you've done so effectively with these teams in an environment where you have had quite a bit of turnover, is that you help your players learn by helping them feel more.
Right.
And so you've kind of adjusted from just telling people what to do to getting them to feel what they need to do. So how did you develop that insight that this was a better way to help people learn, was to really have that emotional connection and these feelings that could be more teachable moments?
Well, I think uh, in order to have a real successful unit, there has to be a common ground. Everyone has to own the group. And so when you have youngsters who come in and might play for a year, they might just play at Duke. And so just like our US team, they might just play for the US. We have to create an environment where you are Duke basketball. What does it mean to be Duke basketball? What does it mean to be a US player? And so you take them with videos or get-togethers or having people speak to them. With our US team, we had a lot of military talk to our team and put them in places where you're taking a picture in front of the Statue of Liberty. Well, with your US uniform on, at a Duke basketball player, how we do our poster for that year. Just things like that where they're able to feel, and also to have more interaction with them at my home or at the assistants' homes, where they get to see us and our families, where oh, you're not just talking to us, your family's here. We must be family. Yeah, yes, you are family. And so those are things that we were not able to do. And we've done them to a pretty good extent in the past, once we recruited one and done. And it's worked out well. It's worked out real well. And these guys still have the connection. Kyrie Irving, even though he got hurt, loves Duke. Jason Tatum wants to try to figure out, even though he's here for a year, how can I take more courses? Our guys want to be associated with the university, even though they were here for one, or like a Luke Kennard for 2 years. But we've been able, I think the family atmosphere and some things, by just putting them in those situations, it has that impact on them. And we end up showing quite a few we have so many amazing videos of our teams in the past, where there's this interaction, the hugging, the emotion, the talking to one another. A big thing for us is to get them to talk to one another, to talk, to not just think, because then they're only talking to themselves, but to talk to one another. In the last couple of years, we found that our guys need to be shown more. And if you just talk to them and show them, like on tape, not just show them on the court, because on the court, you might show them something and they can become head nodders. Like, you get that? Yeah, I get it. They're not going to do this, and so you reinforce it, and it's how you get your message across. And, we're already in the, planning, what we're going to do with our team for this coming year, because some of our freshmen are going to be here in June.
So in terms of how you get things across and the emotions that you invoke, one thing that I know you believe is that a leader has to show strength, but you also show people on your team other sides, and you've always had a wicked sense of humor. You've used anger to some extent as a way to get your message across. Tell us how you developed a richer repertoire of of ways to communicate, emotions to communicate when you're trying to motivate and teach your team?
Well, it's a great question, and it's there's not one answer, because it depends on the person you're trying to motivate and the team you're trying to motivate. And there's some teams that you can really get on right away, and verbally really get, and they react to it. Uh, they're very secure teams. They want that, and especially if your best one or two players do that, then the team takes on the personality of them. Look, it doesn't make a kid bad if he's more sensitive, and then you have to change your delivery. And also depending on the time of the year, like have you won 5 in a row and then lost? Or have you lost 2 in a row and getting ready for the third game? How do you change your delivery in that respect? And I think while you're talking to a team, it's important to, I like to talk to a player or two sometimes before I have a team meeting, and get the feel of the team, and once I get that, say, well, I'm going to ask you why don't you just say, like they might say something to me. And I said, well, when we're having the meeting, why don't you say that? What do you mean? No, just say it. Like we'll be talking and say, coach, and I'll let you, and then you say it. And in that meeting of the individual with the individual, he actually said what I wanted them to feel. But when he says it in the meeting, it's going to have even more impact than me. And so same thing for voices from assistant coaches. I'm a big guy on voices, not that I sit around at night hearing voices, but no, that's not happened yet. And but where they can get tired of your voice. And so whether it be in a practice or a meeting, I like where John Shy or Nolan Smith or Chris Carrawell will say some things, or look, and I'll even change the position of where I am in a meeting. Instead of always being in front of them, and I might sit in the back and have John or Chris or whoever, they're conducting the meeting, and all of a sudden something is said, and I'd say, yo, that is really important here. And then they'll turn their heads, and that would have a bigger impact on them. They're more apt to remember that, and to remember not to have your meetings that long. So I'm huge on communication, and it's up to the leader. It's up to the leader to get the message across, and you have to figure it out. And after a meeting, I'll ask my assistants, maybe not right after, but at some time might go right to practice. Like, did I use the wrong example for that? Or sometimes even before the practice starts, one of my guys will say, Coach, they didn't understand that. You would, and instead of saying, what do you mean? Yeah, they didn't understand. Like, well, tell me what, like use an example. They don't even know who that guy is. And well, they should know who he is. You don't get into that argument. I'm 74. There are a lot of people they don't know that I know. And then I might then get the group together and say, look, I just gave you a bad example. And where a leader then takes responsibility for getting his or her message across wrong. And I said, you guys understand now? I got it, boom. And those type of honest interactions on a daily basis really build up a great rapport that you would have. So in intense moments during a game, a timeout, a halftime, there's instant. You need instant. You need it going right away. Instant trust, instant believability. And that's built starting in the summer up until you have these games.
And that strategy of building that kind of relationship and using multiple voices has been as effective for you in coaching your Duke teams as in coaching the Olympic teams.
Yes, definitely. And then you had really amazing voices. Kobe Bryant, coached him twice and very close with him. LeBron James, they're brilliant, not good. And many times I would meet with them individually to say, I need you today. I need you to do something today. In fact, for the 2012 Olympics in London, I met with LeBron every day before practice because it was a strike shortened season and they were already kind of fried. And I'd say, here's what I'm planning today. What do you think? And he might say, that's great. Or coach, I think we should change the whole thing. Or I'd say, look, what about the first 10 minutes? We'll do anything you want to do. And anything to create ownership. And for the most part, it was better. It was better because it was connected with and then they made it work too, because it was there. They're not going to say something outlandish. They never did. They never did. It was right on because they want to win too. They want to win a gold medal. So it doesn't have to be yours. It has to be ours. And as a leader, you're responsible for ours. And the closer you can get to ours, the better chance you would have a chance to be successful.
And one of the things that you've managed to do with all kinds of different teams, again, both your Duke teams and these gold medal winning national men teams, is you don't ask anyone to check their ego at the door.
No.
So you want them to have a big ego, but somehow you get them to get that ego, pulling in the same direction as other egos, so that you can win. What's the magic there?
Well, you always want people to use their talents. Why would I tell anyone, like, think less of yourself? Don't try to do what you can do. But like with the U.S. team, in one of our first meeting, Jerry Colangelo, who ran the team, was in charge, gave that expression, which you hear a lot, leave your egos at the door. And I came up afterwards and said, it's probably the only time I'm going to disagree with you, but Kobe, LeBron, Carmelo, bring your egos with you. You know why? Because the Gasol brothers are going to bring them from Spain. Ginobili's going to bring them, and I mentioned a number of great international players. And I said, but what we need to do is then have one collective ego. I call it an ego umbrella. And that's called, I said, look, the 3 letters on the front of your jerseys. That's the ego. We'll have the biggest USA ego if all of you bring that. And at the end of the day, it's one of the basic tenets of team building, and that's collective responsibility. We're only going to win if we win together. And along with that, Bill, I remind them. I said, there's only one question that people will ask of you. Did you win the gold medal? And your only answer can be, hell yes, we won it. They're not going to ask you how many points you scored, how many rebounds or whatever. They're going to say, did you win the gold medal? And with the first team, I said, at some time, I said, I'm already I got grandkids. Just think of it, LeBron, Carmelo, one day your grandkid's going to be sitting on your knee and saying, Granddad, didn't you play in the Beijing Olympics? Yeah, yes, son. Did you win? No, son, we won the bronze. Is that what you want? And really, it's a true story. I mean, and then they start laughing, but they know, like, we better get our butts in gear. We gotta get this done.
So in another interview, someone asked you the question, what are the greatest insights you've learned about leadership from all of your great success? And you mentioned two things. Number one, that you have to get people to change their limits and get them to understand that they will fail, but that failure is not a destination. And the second thing is that you don't get there alone. So it seems to me that the part of the trick here is for these people with big egos is to recognize as good as they are, they're still not going to get there alone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they understood that. Thank goodness. And I'll give you an example. In the very first practice we had, Jason Kidd was a Hall of Fame guard, one of the best passers, and we're running a full court offensive drill. And Kobe Bryant and LeBron are running on the wings, and the ball's going all over the place, and so I got them together, and Jason Kidd said, "I'm sorry, I'll do better." And LeBron and Kobe said, "Hey, Jay Kidd, we're not accustomed to your level of talent. We'll catch up to you." Isn't that great? That's on us. Like, don't hold back. Play that piano as hard as you can. Sing your song as loud as you can. And that's how we're going to get better. And they understood, they made each other better with their talents. It is really kind of an amazing thing to see. And as a result, these friendships developed. That's why Wade, Bosch, and LeBron were in Miami, and Anthony Davis is with LeBron and with the Lakers, where guys, they formed friendships. Kyrie and Kevin Durant and James Harden are together. They played with one another. They understood what it was to play with other outstanding talent. And so if you have outstanding talent, you should want other outstanding talent to be there, because that'll make you better on a day-to-day basis. And I call it a no jealous zone. No jealous zone. If you can get a group to have a no jealous zone, you got a chance to be very, very good.
So the flip side of this, in terms of you don't get there alone, and so if you can check your jealousy at the door, around the changing limits, sometimes you'll have players who don't recognize their limits and want to do more and go beyond where they're really capable. How do you get someone to understand, this is how you can be a key part of the team, and it may not be you're going to score 20 points a game, you're going to do something else, and maybe you should stop chucking up the basketball so much.
Well, to me, it's easier to change that than sometimes, Bill, having a kid recognize that he can do more. That what he did more of against lower level competition isn't going to work with this level of competition. The speed, the number of shots, how quickly you get a shot released, and whatever. And so here's how you can get better. And they can get knocked back. Like Wendell Moore had that for him this year during the whole month of December. He was trying to be perfect, and then he wasn't good at anything. And he's on a road where he played really well after that. But after the season, we sat down with him and said, you got to become a better athlete. You got to walk a little bit differently. We got to, and we went through a whole, and instead of him saying, what do you mean I got to walk differently? I said, you got to walk differently. You're not walking. I said, if you and I start right now and walk 20 feet, I'll walk quicker than you without it being a race. And I did, because he kind of,
Was that because of your bionic hips?
well, knees too. And, also, I had a sense of urgency that I needed to beat him in order to make a point. But where you walk, I said, everything you do has to be done more with a purpose, and it'll change your gait. So sometimes it's a more, I said, you're really good, and if you do this, you can be exceptional. So he's learning to be a better athlete. JJ Redick did that after his second year in the NBA. He wasn't a good enough athlete, and he came here and he spent the whole summer and became a better athlete. Because when you're not doing something well, it doesn't mean you're not necessarily good. It means you may not be doing it the right way. And so the changing a habit is difficult, especially if it was a habit that worked with lower level competition. Well, I used to be able, you used to play in that level of competition too, hotshot. Like, we're in the left lane, not the right lane on the highway. You have to learn to run and prepare like you're in the left lane. So I enjoy that though, because then when a kid gets it, it's a magnificent thing. Whereas a Zion Williamson or RJ Barrett, they didn't have to do all those things. Jason Tatum, you're teaching them a little bit different.
So I'm going to change the subject away from your teams in the narrow sense to the broader sense, which is last June, you made a video that went viral where you said Black Lives Matter. And you said it's not a political statement, it's a human rights statement, it's a fairness statement. And of course, people who've been saying Black Lives Matter have been criticized if they're in the world of sports. So for example, LeBron, I don't know how many people have told him, shut up and play. And so what is your feeling about when you feel it's important to speak out and use your platform to address an issue in society? So the bigger team, that others may not agree with what you're doing, but you're going to go ahead and say this anyway.
Well, I think you should only do something if you feel it and understand it to the level that you want to say it at. And I don't think I would have done that a few months before that. Although I wasn't against that, I wouldn't have used that platform. But what we did, the pandemic gave you time to listen more. And we have a brotherhood of former players. And we had a couple Zooms where over 100 of our former players and managers were on them. And I listened to them and I said, man, I've missed the boat here. Like there's deep feeling here. And we actually started 2 focus groups, one concerned with voting nationally, and one to help rid Durham of systemic racism, to do what we can in our own community. And I felt compelled to do that. I watched more on TV, not just people protesting, but I became more educated. And so when I did the video, I really wanted to do it. And every day I talked with my staff, and we have at that time of our 4 guys, John Shires White, Nolan Smith, Nate James, and Chris Carroll are African-American. And we talked about this every day. And I felt them, and actually they felt me in a different way too. And so finally I said, I got to do something. And so I had Dave Bradley from our social media set up his stuff. And I said, Nolan, you come down and you stand on the other side of the camera, and I'm just going to talk to you
Hmm.
because that's who I've listened to you. And in one take, that's what we did. And about 3 to 4 million views. And I was so proud that we did it. And I can tell you, I'm so much closer with my guys now and understand it better. But you have, and then I was confident. I wasn't placed in a situation with my platform that it was against what Duke's platform might be, where you get, that's a sensitive issue. If you're with an organization that you're not sure of, I'm not saying you shouldn't say it, but it was easier for me to say it because, look, at Duke, we have every gender, every race, every nationality, every color, we got everything. We understand how important it is to have everything. The world doesn't understand that, or a lot of the world does. So I was confident. I didn't even think about it. How about that? Being at a place where you have that much, either that or I was an idiot for not thinking about it. But I felt real comfortable in doing it in every way. And the feedback was great. Obviously, there was some backlash where there are different people who say they were Duke fans, saying, how can you do that? I'm never going to cheer for you. And yeah, I don't answer them, but that's fine. And why would I want you to cheer for me if you don't cheer for human rights? Yeah, like, why would I want your voice yelling defense, or yay, Coach K, So you're not going to please everybody, but I'm proud of what we did. And, all of the people in the audience are going to graduate. They're going to be, MBA, they're going to be professionals. You all are going to have platforms. And having a platform doesn't necessarily mean just to say Black Lives Matter, but it means, like, what do you do in your community to use like our platform? We have the Emily Krzyzewski Center for 15 years in Durham. We service 2,000 kids a year. That's a platform. That we've been trying to get equal education and equal opportunities for youngsters, low-income kids for 15 years. But that wasn't a controversial thing. And but using your don't be, you all are going to be really successful. You got to use that success to help in other areas. And I'm proud. Bill, today, I just called. I get this a lot where you get emails or letters. Someone's dying, someone's going to have brain surgery and whatever. And I had a good talk with a person who is going to have brain surgery today. So that made me feel good. It made them feel good too, but it made me feel good and lucky, too. If you have a platform, you're probably pretty damn lucky. So, to whom much is given, much is expected. All of you in the audience, much is given, and you're going to do even more. Much is expected. And anyway, I'm sorry to get on a soapbox here.
No. So, one thing that has really become clear over time is your willingness to stretch yourself and to show, I think I put it before, more emotional range in terms of the way you present yourself. And in fact, in contrast to this notion that a leader always has to be strong, you've been very willing to show your vulnerabilities and you're, I've seen you cry multiple times as you're talking about something. How did you become comfortable with showing that side of yourself, which is so important in terms of being able to connect with people?
Well, I think it's a different definition of strength. And I grew up in all boys. Catholic high school. West Point was all male at the time I went. The Army was pretty much all male. I'm in sports. And so for me, having my wife and I will be married 52 years in June. We got married on graduation day. She's been an amazing partner for me and very smart, very intelligent, and wise, wise. And my three daughters. And by growing up my adult life with that family, I've recognized that that was okay to do it, that it was in some respects stronger to do it. And what they would say is, Dad, just be real. Just be real. That's all people want. And so I've really learned from having my four ladies in my life. I've been very lucky, and they're still very much a part, and they keep you very humble. So
yeah, I was going to ask, how do you stay humble when you have so much success?
No, well, because when I'm with them, we never talk about my stuff.
Yeah.
Like except they'll give advice. Part of
Did
the platform.
Did they give advice this year along with me? Is that?
No, it was just your advice.
Just me.
You were the one solely responsible for this season. No, they. I think what we're talking about with platform and family, for successful people, because you go to Fuqua, you're going to be successful, is to have balance, and get involved in a community, family, kids, faith. I think it's very important to have that balance, and I've been really lucky in that regard. And at the times where you could you get torqued out or really go crazy, and someone saying, "No, come here," you're not, and no, come here. That's not right. Oh yeah, it's not right. It's not right. And then finally you come to your senses, it's not right. I got to do that. And I think we all need that at some time. And I've had that with my family. I've also had it with, two of them. The most amazing person I've ever been in contact with at Duke, maybe in my life, is Keith Brody, my second president. And he helped me in every way. And my athletics director, Tom Butters, because he believed in me at three extraordinary times in my career. And so you're not going to do it alone. That's why you have to have good people around you, people who are going to tell you the truth, and people who love you, people who they want you to be good. Like they want you to be good. And I've been very, very lucky. It's one of the reasons I've stayed at Duke my whole time. I've had people like that around me all the time.
So something that the people talk about all the time is work-life balance. And, I have to believe that your life can become very unbalanced at times, as you have to be working so hard and so, immersed in what you're doing. And yet you found a way to achieve that balance. And, back to this, your comments about your family, you're starting five.
Right.
So, so tell me about the starting five. What does that mean?
Yeah, that's the texting group. My three daughters, my wife, and me. And it's one of those things where, we text a lot. They do, and
You'll come in with some emojis, right?
Yes, no, and Bitmojis, and I'm not as emoji as I am a bitmoji. I don't understand all that, all the emoji, but you know, it's real. It's important to use humor too. Like we we get a lot across by kind of goofing on one another, and but I might come out of a practice and see you have 28 text messages, and it'll all be the stream of what they're doing. And see, we are, God's been good to us. We have 10 grandchildren, and they're all in the area. And so we, you know, we're we're like the way I grew up in Chicago, where your whole family was right there. And when does that happen? And so that's worked out really well for me. And you know, my wife and I have been partners in my career. So when you say at times it can go crazy, she helps center me, yeah, but she also helps give me advice, whether I want it or not sometimes. But you know, a big thing is I always knew this is what I wanted to be since I was 16. So at the end of the day, I have loved my profession. And so it's made some of the work that you didn't like easier. Because even if you love everything, you're not going to love all the work you have to do about what you love. But you know, I have been able to love my work, and where a lot of people work and try to love it. And my buddies from Chicago say you haven't worked a day in your life. And I said, well, that's my goal. Not
Yeah.
to keep
So
going.
you did have a plan at 16 to be a coach and a
I
teacher.
did.
And that's I think that's worked out okay.
Yeah, and it's because my coach at that time believed in me more than I believed in me, and I believed in me. He believed more, and I had a priest who, Father Rogue, he's still alive. My coach just passed away this past year, but Father Rogue explained. You know, we're Catholics. My wife's Southern Baptist, and at 15 and 16, at that time, it felt like everything you did was wrong. Every thought you had was a sin. And you start wondering, life's not going to be very good if this is the way it is. And Father Rogue explained it to me really well, and has continued to do that my whole life. And the impact that those two guys had on me, I'd say, I mean, I can have an impact on somebody like that. That's got to be, somebody can believe in me when I say something, and I might have an impact on their life. That's a pretty cool thing to be able to do. So, and then it went on steroids, you know, and I got all Duke and West Point and US team, and very lucky, very lucky.
And the old saying, it's lonely at the top, that you have managed to lead a life where it's not lonely, apparently.
Yeah, and for all the people in the audience, leadership is somewhat lonely. There's no question about it, because you can listen and talk to people and whatever, but at times you have to take all that in and think. You have to give yourself time to think and really figure it out. And those are the lonely times. But the fact that you have strength around you when you then come up with that decision, I think you do it from a position of strength, because you know if you fall, there's going to be somebody to catch you or pick you up. You're not you may be thinking alone, but when you act, it won't be alone. It will not be alone. You'll have your group behind you, and that's the care that a group needs, and a leader needs that. a leader needs to take the time to develop that support system for himself or herself.
So I'm going to ask you one more question about you, and then I'm going to ask you to give our people that are on the Zoom some advice. So you get asked about what would you like your legacy to be all the time, and if I kind of interpret your answer, it's like I work hard, and this is something that we haven't talked about at all, but being successful takes a lot of work.
Takes a lot of work.
And so that you want to be known for someone who worked hard, and every day that you are hungry like your first day. So do you still feel that hunger?
Yeah, I do, especially after this past year. I don't know how much longer I'm going to do that, because it takes a lot. It takes a lot, but I definitely feel it, and you know, it's I'm excited to be this hungry, and I'm excited about, you know, moving forward and learning from this past year, and my new team. The cool thing, one of the cool things, even though there's turnover a lot, is I got a really good group of guys coming in. And so I'm a 74-year-old guy hanging with 18 to 22-year-old guys, not off the court, but on the court. And they make you young. And I want to make them better and a unit. But they give me while I'm giving them. And when you have a successful group, you have two-way people. They give and they take. And I'm anxious to develop that again. And that's why I'm still doing it right now. And there's the desire to get that done.
And we are so grateful that you are. So some advice then for the students who are graduating and have gone through this craziness. Any advice to them in terms of how they make the best of what they've experienced and what they can do, and then maybe different advice for those students who are going to be coming back.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me say the ones that are coming back. As much as you think you know Fuqua, you don't. It's a great school, and I know in talking to Bill the other day, you all have done a really good job. It's kind of remarkable how good a job you all have done. But there hasn't been Fuqua. There's a sense of community, and the people aspect. You probably did your courses as well or better, but you were kind of robbed of the interaction of being with one another to the extent that Fuqua allows you to do it or demands that you do it. And you need to capture that even higher next year. And really, that's my advice going forward. And those who graduate, you need to be with good people. You know, like when you're looking at your opportunities, don't just look at it bottom line with money and make a lot of money. You know, go ahead and make a hell of a lot of money, but try to do it with really good people where you'll enjoy it more, and where people make you better, you know, and you make people better. And that's how I try to recruit. You know, some of you have heard the story, but my mom, God bless her, when I was going to high school the night before, said, "Mike, get on the right bus tomorrow." And I grew up in the inner city of Chicago, and I said, "Ma," I was a punk, 14-year-old punk. I knew everything. I said, yeah, Damon to Armitage, Armitage there, Division of Grand, Grand there. I got 2 ways. She says, no, Michael. And then when I was an idiot, she'd say Michael. And she said, Michael, tomorrow you're going to meet new people. You know, you drive your own bus your whole life. Only put good people on them. And if you get on someone else's bus, make sure they're good people. And you got on the right bus and going to Fuqua. You know, make sure when you leave Fuqua, you get on the right bus and you only let good people on it. And I've used that. I'm around good people almost all the time, and they've made me better and very, very successful. And yeah, I've been fortunate to make a great living. I made a great living not trying to make a lot of money. It just because of how my market, how that thing went. I've been doing, yeah, I would have done this. Don't tell my athletic director this, but I was doing this for a lot less when I got started and whatever, and loved it. You know, and then the market went up and the success went up. And I think when you do what you love like that, that kind of takes care of itself. I believe that. At least it's worked that way for me. So God bless you as you do that. And remember to keep learning and keep your association with Fuqua. You know, wherever you went to undergraduate, that's great. You know, and there were relationships there, but the relationships you developed at Fuqua were at a different time in your life. And if you keep those connections so that as you question, call, text, visit, you know, keep interacting and keep making, you made each other better during the time you've been at Fuqua. Don't stop. You know, don't stop. And again, for those coming back, let's get Duke, Fuqua, Duke basketball, and everybody. Let's get back and go, man.
Let's get at it.
Let's get at it. Yeah.
So, Coach, we are so incredibly fortunate to be on your bus, and you do so much to make us better. And it's just amazing to have access to, as I said, one of the world's greatest leaders, one of the world's greatest educators.
Well,
thank you so much for all that you do for Duke, for Fuqua, and for society. It is really absolutely extraordinary.
Well, thanks, Bill. It's an honor to be on the team. You know, I'm going to go home right now. And you know what my wife has done? She's having a divas dinner for all the assistant coaches' wives. And where one of my assistants, Nate James, got to be the head coach at Austin P. So they kicked me out. I'm doing Zoom in my office. And so I'm going to go home and hopefully celebrate a little bit with them when I get back. And that's the family aspect that we're talking about. But it's been my honor, and I hope to do this in person. We do this in person next year.
Absolutely.
All
Thank you so much.
Take care.